Hello and welcome to the real world. You're joined by Matthew and myself, Jacques Duplessis, and tonight we are talking about dreams. Good evening, Matthew.
Hi, Jacques. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm very excited about tonight's topic. I haven't written that many things down, but I think that the ones that I have written down are very thought-provoking, and I'm excited to speak to you about them.
Cool, dude. I'm just looking over my notes here real quick, and I wanted to, let me just run through the topics I've got here real quick. The first one is lucid dreaming. I want to chat to you a bit about that and ask you if you've ever had any lucid dreams and talk about some techniques. And
Okay.
then some examples of lucid dreams I've had and just some other dreams I've had in my life that have really stuck out for me. And then right at the end, just two thoughts on what we will have been speaking about.
That's a very interesting place to start from. I'm going to be very honest with you. I have never attempted to lucid dream.
Okay.
I I don't really even know what that is, and so maybe you can start by telling me exactly what that is,
All right. Well,
because I'm interested.
a lucid dream is when during during a dream you're still dreaming, but you're aware that you're dreaming, as if you were awake. In other words, you can take conscious control of what you're doing and to some extent the environment, whereas in a regular dream, things just happen and it's like watching a movie.
So, like
So
my
that's
dreams.
a normal dream as
Okay.
opposed to a normal dream. So for the longest time, I mean, until I watched the movie Inception, whenever it came out a few years ago, I thought that I didn't really dream because I'd had I would remember maybe one dream a month, if that. And then I watched that movie and it excited me and it was like, whoa, this is crazy, the story, and I started researching dreams a bit. And I stumbled across this fact that everyone dreams, let's say, 8 times a night. Every time you go through a REM cycle of sleep, which you go through several stages of REM and non-REM sleep, every night you dream. And I was like, but this is crazy because I can never remember anything. And then more and more research led me onto the topic of lucid dreaming. And the first trick or skill or practical thing you can do to start having lucid dreams is keeping a dream journal where you focus on dream recall, and by consciously trying to, first thing as soon as you wake up every morning, trying to remember a dream and then writing it down in the present tense immediately, that helps you start remembering dreams. And now, after you start that practice, you realize, whoa, you do dream a heck of a lot every night.
Okay. Okay.
So that's the first step. What about you? Do you dream of? Do you feel like you dream often? Do you often remember
Um,
dreams?
I go through periods in my life where I dream frequently that I remember. I don't
Okay.
dream because I will accept your statistic of approximately 8 dreams a night because I've done very little research on that. But and I don't see why you'd lie about it, sir. But I go through periods where I have better recall than other periods,
Yeah.
and I have once or twice on recurring dreams felt that I had more control in a dream. But mostly I have just been along for the ride, and I've had some pretty terrible dreams that I probably would have just ended if I had any ability whatsoever in a dream. I will have two questions for you. So the first question I have before I ask about the dream journal, because I think that'll be a way more interesting question. But how do you know when you wake up that you won't just make shit up when you try to recall a dream? Like, how do you know that
I've
you won't
never.
just
Yeah.
invent a memory that didn't exist in a dream? Or I don't know how it works, so I'm just curious.
That's a good question that I've never ever thought, but um, it's you just don't. I mean, it's like you wake up from the dream and then you still picture everything very vividly. You're still kind of living through it.
So when it's still very fresh in your mind, you capture it as best as you can.
Yeah, so the idea is that with a dream journal, it's like literally the second you open your eyes, you grab your notebook and your pen, which you put next to your bed, and you start writing it down. Or else, I mean, if I get up and I start going about my day, dreams are gone very quickly.
Same for me.
It's just like a fragment here or there, maybe a scene I remember. But if I write it down, it not only does it come back, it also is very vivid. But here's a crazy technique as well. So let's say you wake up and you're on your back. Maybe you remember one dream, maybe you remember nothing. Then you keep your eyes closed, roll over onto your right side, and suddenly a dream comes to you.
Oh, wow, okay.
And then roll over into your left side. Maybe there's nothing today, but maybe tomorrow there's one. And
That's so strange.
For whatever reason, like the idea is the position you were sleeping in when you had that dream. When you go back in that position, it like just jogs your memory. There's some strange muscle memory thing going on.
That's crazy.
And it really works. It really works.
You're blowing my mind. Sense. You're blowing my mind because I am now the next dream I have. I'm going to be next morning, tomorrow. I'm going to be turning around every position. I'm going to try. Maybe I'm going to try and like sleep on my head even. I'm going to see what happens.
Well, the lucid dreaming techniques that worked for me, that got me into it, is first you just need to know that it exists and that it's possible, and then you start trying. And it took me a very long time before I had my first lucid dream.
Yes, I was going to ask you, weren't you becoming quite despondent at some point because you don't know if you're doing it correctly because you've never had one before? For me, the first time is always more difficult in any endeavor.
Well, this is what I did. So I just did a bit of research and I got hold of a bunch of techniques and I tried as many of them as I could, and only one or two really worked for me. So the very first thing is you need to build what they call dream recall. So that's the point of dream journals. First you need to be remembering your dreams, or else you might be having lucid dreams and you don't remember them, then what's the point?
Okay.
So
how do you do that?
To do that is the dream journal. You put a notebook next to your bed, and the second you wake up, you train yourself first thing. Just keep your eyes closed, roll over, try and get stuff coming back to you, and then write it down in the first person. And sorry, when I say in the first person, I mean use the first person, but what I actually mean to say is in the present tense. That's what's important.
Okay, in the
present tense, as if you're reliving it, because when you do that, it just jogs your memory more.
So I am eating an apple.
Yes, you want to say that. And then, once you're remembering whatever, 2, 3, 4 dreams a night, then I would say start trying to become lucid. And there are a few techniques. One is, you need to train yourself in your waking life to do what they call reality checks. So that becomes a habit. And when you're dreaming, then you perform a reality check, and that makes you lucid. So, for example, in dreams, light switches often don't work the way they do in reality. So in reality, you turn a light switch on, the light goes on, you turn the light switch off, the light goes off. But often in a dream, if you play with the light switch, like you'll turn it off and it will stay on, or you'll turn it off and on and nothing will change. And
interesting.
If you in your waking life, every single time you flick a light switch, just ask yourself, am I dreaming? And then test, and then flick the light switch once or twice, see if it works like the way it should work. And then again ask, am I dreaming? No, I'm not dreaming. Okay, carry on about your day. Then the idea is, you do that so often, it's a habit that when you dream and you stumble across a light switch and you flick it on or off and it doesn't work, you ask yourself, am I dreaming? And you're like, dude, I'm dreaming. And then you're lucid. So that's the first technique. That one never worked for me. I don't know if there are no light switches in my dream or I never noticed them,
well, I was going to ask you, don't you, before you tell the second one, that sounds very interesting, I might try that, but don't you just, when you realize you're dreaming, don't you wake up?
Okay, so that's something that happens very commonly. It's happened to me once or twice, but you get used to that as well after a while. So the
Okay.
first few times you become lucid, it's like, whoa, it's your whole reality is shattered. And what I would find is very much like the scene in Inception where near the beginning where Leonardo DiCaprio is running away and he's being chased and there's water coming through the windows and it feels like the whole world is crumbling and breaking down. It's very much like that, where things just start shattering and dissolving and falling apart, and then you wake up.
That's very
Um,
interesting.
but you get used to that. That lasts for a few seconds, and if you can hang on, then you're fine. Then things stabilize.
Okay.
One trick you can do, which I managed to remember once in a dream it did and it worked, is if you feel like the dream is dissolving and you're about to wake up, spin in circles.
Spin in circles.
Spin in circles, and then it
Okay.
worked for me. It worked.
Interesting.
So a few more reality checks. One is every time you jump or hop in real life, just kind of ask yourself, is gravity working right? Am I dreaming? Because in a dream, when your feet leave the ground, often you just start flying, or you notice that gravity doesn't work right. So that's something that I've done. Like, you can fly in dreams.
That's
and I'm
amazing.
pretty sure that that's where the inspiration for Superman came from. I'm convinced, because it feels exact. It's literally like you just take off and fly, exactly like how Superman does it. So that's another reality check you can try. And the one that works, there are a couple more. One is every time you look in a mirror, just look carefully at your face and make sure it's exactly right, like how you are. Because in a dream, you always look a little bit different. Every time you see yourself in a mirror, it's you, but it's definitely not you, if that makes sense.
It might be the you that you perceive, or a you in that dream, or that part of your mind perceives, but not all of you, or something like that. I don't know.
Whatever it is, you just looked a bit different, subtly different. That's worked for me once, but it's certainly not a common one. The one that worked the best for me is any writing, any text or any number that you see, for example, on a watch or a sign in a street or words in a book. If you read it in the dream, let's say the sentence is, I like apples, that you saw on a poster. If you look away from that and you look back, it'll be either jumbled or it will be a different sentence.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
that for me has always been true in a dream. Every single time there's text or a watch or a clock or anything you read and you look away and you look back again and it's different. That's the one that's worked the best for me. So in my waking life, I try every now and then just to, when I read something or when I look at the time, just ask myself, am I dreaming? Look away, look back, oh, it's the same text. Look away, look back, oh, it's the same text. Okay, now I'm awake, I'm fine. And, it becomes a habit and you need to consciously keep doing that. And if you consciously keep doing that, then it spills over into your dreaming world and it works. But like at the moment, I haven't had a lucid dream in a long time because I've stopped doing these reality checks.
You're going to make me become very OCD.
That's the only way, man. That's the only way.
I think I'll have to try various ones, but I think I might struggle with this specific one about the text because for some reason my whole life I've had this recurring thought when I think about dreams about why in my dreams is the text always blurry.
That's why.
Yes, so but always, and I can never read them, and so now I think
There are a
that's
few other reality checks that I can't remember offhand, but I haven't used them because they didn't work for me.
I'm
And
assuming different ones would work for different people as
yes,
well.
but another way that you can find one that works for you is especially if you've kept a dream journal or if you just happen to remember the dreams you've had in the past and stuff that that recurs, you can think what elements are common, and every time you're in a similar situation, you can do a reality check. So for example, at one stage I was having a lot of dreams about playing cricket. So every time in my waking life that I saw cricket on TV or that I walked past a cricket game or that I played cricket, I would do a reality check. and then that might spill over into your dream. So if there are certain things that crop up all the time, then it's worth trying to build a reality check around that. So I guess that's the technique side.
Hmm.
Then
I have a question, if I may
yes,
ask. So, have you ever considered that maybe, because I want to still speak about what kind of control you get in dreams and what you can
yes,
do and stuff like that. But have you ever considered that maybe once you become aware of a dream, that the dream becomes lucid, that it is subject to the observer effect, that the phenomenon where, like, the fact that you've noticed that you're observing a dream affects what the dream beyond what it would have been had you just
yes,
lived the dream.
yes. I'm sure that happens. Well, first of all, because often when you become lucid, things start getting shaky and are about to dissolve, and immediately that changes everything.
Okay.
It immediately changes the way you feel and the way the world reacts. I don't know if it's any more specific than that. Certainly in my experience, I can't say that the dream would have gone a different way if I was aware of it or not, but because I'm aware, then I do stuff differently. I mean, I consciously do something else. So in that sense, I would say yes. So
So
I may as well
alternate
give you an
pathways
example.
in a dream.
Yes, well, I may as well give you an example now, which ties into the observer effect somewhat. And so one of the first lucid dreams I had was, it started off as almost as if I was playing a computer game, like the Call of Duty Modern Warfare games. And it was very much like this one level in the Modern Warfare 1, I believe, where you chopper in with your group of guys and you land on this ship and you need to clear the ship of terrorists. And the dream was basically that I was a counter-terrorist busy eliminating the bad guys on the ship. And at some point I became lucid. I forget how I became lucid, but I just did. And then I decided, this is fun. It's cool shooting the bad guys, but I want to fly. So I just took off. And then so then obviously the tree went in a very different direction, which it wouldn't have gone in had I not become lucid. So what happened next was I flew, and suddenly I was in the city flying, and there were some other people flying with me. And then we flew around in the sky for a bit, but I decided, yeah, let's go a bit further. So I flew out into space, looked back at the
Amazing.
Earth, and I said, yeah, let's fly a bit further. And I flew out to the edge of the solar system. And then I started panicking because I was like, I'm a bit far out now. I should probably turn back. So I turned around and I headed back for Earth. And I realized I wasn't going to slow down in time. So
Okay.
as my body entered the Earth's atmosphere, when I realized, whoops, I've made a mistake, I'm going to crash, then it was as if the entire point of view changed. So my point of view became a hovering, floating camera in space, watching my body
Oh
hurtle
wow.
back down to Earth. And the camera saw my body crash in the ocean with this outrageously enormous explosion, and then the tsunami covered the Earth.
You just go.
That's how it ended.
I like
Um,
how your dream became like a third person asteroid movie at the end there almost.
so that one was interesting for me because there were definitely moments where I had control in the sense that I made decisions. I'm going to fly, I'm going to do this, but the world around me still changed by itself and had its own logic to it. And then there was that camera moment, which was completely out of my control. I still knew I was dreaming the whole time, but I wasn't controlling every single aspect of it. And apparently, the better you get at lucid dreaming, the more conscious control, to the extent where people can just immediately, as they fall asleep, be lucid and then like summon a dream that they want to have. I've never had anything like
To
that happen.
summon a dream.
Apparently,
Okay.
that's possible.
Okay, so tell me about your starting level of control. Tell about where you got before you stopped. How you noticed your ability to, like, what noticeable improvement in control of your dreams did you have?
Well, the first thing that happened the first few times was I would just be lucid in the sense that I knew I was dreaming,
Okay.
but then the dream still played out as it would have anyway. I didn't affect it in any way, except that I was aware, which
Just
in
observing.
itself it's a very strange feeling to go through, but
Okay.
I had no control. And then I guess the more comfortable I became with it, and the more stuff I remembered, because it had a lot to do with memory, because it's one thing to become lucid, but then you need to remember, oh, I can fly, and oh, I can control stuff, and oh, I can change things. And I had to keep reminding myself in my waking life, much like the reality checks that become habit. You need to constantly be reminding yourself what you can do and what you want to do. So you need to sort of prime your mind. I want to try fly, I want to try fly, I want to try fly, and then eventually you do fly in a dream. So that was the first thing I flew. And then the highest level of control I got to was the dream started off where I was outside this house, this crazy mansion type building, and I wanted to get inside. And the door was closed, rather the front door was open, and I went inside, and then there was just a solid wall in front of me. But I knew there was something cool, and I had to get further in the house. And then I remembered, okay, but I can control this dream. So I just decided I'm going to walk through the wall. And then I did. I just walked through the wall, and I got through it. And there was a very strange sensation when that happened. So when you become lucid, there's a very strange sensation, like the dream's going to collapse and everything feels hypercharged, that you're like breaking the rules and this shouldn't be possible, but here it is happening. Then in that moment where I decided to walk through the wall, another higher version of that feeling happened, where you know that this is impossible, but you're doing it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I walked through the wall, and then I was in what I would describe as a crazy Hollywood frat boy pool party type situation, where there were just tons of people dressed all crazy, partying, having drinks, and there was this enormous pool. And I was now in this party, and I was like, that's awesome, great, fun. Then I remembered, you should be able to summon anyone you want in the dream. You can just get someone to appear. So I decided I'm going to summon a hot girl. And
Fair enough.
And so, not by choice, but Lady Gaga appeared.
Okay.
Lady Gaga was just there. And then I started hooking up with Lady Gaga in front of the whole party. Things got frisky, and then the dream ended. But that was as, I guess, higher level of control as I ever got to. And then I lapsed, and I got out of lucid dreaming for a while. But setting this podcast's theme as dreaming, in that it makes me want to start all over again.
Oh yes,
I
yes.
guess we can check each other, and you can get started, and I can try and pick it up again.
I wanted to say that it almost sounds like lucid dreaming is kind of like the Matrix. Like we're living in the battery world, we're living in the battery world, and the dreams you can control, like backwards. But it almost sounds exactly like that.
It is a bit like that. It's just that the duration of a dream, at least in my experience, is always fairly short.
Yes, fair enough.
But it certainly does feel a bit like the Matrix when you do something that is impossible. It's impossible, but you've just done it. And I find in my dreams tend to be quite vivid, but when I become lucid, they become hyper real, where it's very difficult. to tell them apart from reality, except that your conscious mind knows I shouldn't be flying. There shouldn't be these certain things happening, and yet they are happening. But otherwise, I mean, the emotion, the way things look, the clarity, the detail with which you can see things, in my experience, is as real as waking life.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to say though that I feel like I'm not sure. You'd probably have to ask Lady Gaga, but I feel of all the people you could have summoned, she seems the most likely to be game with that. Like, just got summoned to a lucid dream. I'm gonna rock and roll with it. I think it was a pretty good choice actually. She might have just rolled with it.
She may have.
I'm not sure, but maybe.
They also say, though, let me just say this real quick while it's fresh on my mind. They say that every single face you see in a dream is a real face that you've seen in your life before. That you never invent something. And I have no idea how they have figured that out, but they have.
The always hidden they.
They.
Always lurking in the shadows they are. I want to speak about your dream journal.
Okay.
So, you get your dream journal, and I'm assuming as you get better at lucid dreaming, you get better at writing in your dream journal as well, because you get better recall and you get better at describing what you've seen. So, explain to me in your dream journal what themes you might have noticed, or what the hell moments did you have, or was there anything specifics that stood out to you from your dream journal?
You do start noticing certain things that are, I guess there were two categories that I noticed in my journaling. The first was there were certain themes that kept cropping up, and by theme I mean recurring elements, not necessarily the same dream, but just perhaps subject matter that cropped up over and over again. So cricket was one for me. When I got into lucid dreaming, I hadn't played cricket in many, many years, but so I wasn't in my waking life, I wasn't experiencing cricket in any way whatsoever, and I hadn't for a long time. But throughout my entire school career, I played cricket, and it meant a lot to me, and I'd invested time and effort and passion into cricket, and a lot of my identity went into it. So it felt like there was a subconscious message being communicated through the theme of cricket, which is why it kept coming up in the dream. And that type of dream was completely juxtaposed to some others that truly just felt like all sorts of stuff that's happened to you during the day, that day or maybe the day before, just random things happening with no story, no order to them. Whereas the more thematic dreams it was like watching an extended scene from a movie with characters and a plot, and it starts here and it logically progresses there. So in my journal, there were the two types. That one just felt like random mixed up day-to-day events. The other felt almost like watching a scripted movie scene. Perhaps your subconscious directly trying to communicate something to you.
I wanted to ask you, was there anything else that you specifically, maybe like a fixation with the color red, or a specific deep material detail that you noticed that always, like, that stood out more prominently than something else? For example, yeah, so you can go.
The only one that I can think of at the moment is every time I had a dream that was, the setting of the dream was nighttime, and I'd be outside, the darkness was darker than darkness is in reality. It was
Very
like the darkest darkness it can be.
Blacker than the blackest black.
But yes, that's another reality check you can try to learn in your waking life. Every time something feels strange, you just do a reality check. and you ask yourself, am I dreaming? Because there are certain things that pop up in your dreams where it feels weird, and then if you're not, rather, let me rather try and re-explain that. When you wake up in the morning and you write down your dream in your dream journal, there are these certain moments where you're like, oh, I should have realized I was dreaming because this thing is impossible, or this thing is really strange.
Mm-hmm.
And if you train yourself in your waking life, whenever something odd happens, you notice something odd or you feel a bit weird, if in those moments you can also train yourself to just ask, am I dreaming? Then when an odd thing pops up in your dream, you're often more likely to snap into a lucid state.
Okay. That's very interesting. I'm learning so much. I'm enjoying this. Yes. I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, the techniques are useful.
I wanted to ask you, did any of the lucid dreaming experiences directly affect you in your waking life? At any point?
Well, there were certain dreams, like the ones I was telling you about now, the ones that seemed more scripted and movie-like. There are certain ones I've had quite recently that weren't lucid dreams, that were just dreams, where I almost relived something that I'd gone through. So, for example, I went to a club the other night with one of my friends, and we met some people, we met some girls, and we started chatting, and then went home. But then I had this dream where almost the exact same thing happened, but the version of me in the dream, it was as if it was the best version of me possible, reacting and acting and saying and doing things the best way I could have done things. As if my subconscious mind was telling me, this is your potential, this is what you could be, this is how you could have done things. Not in a chastising kind of way, not in a guilt trip kind of way, just in a this is your potential type of way. So that type of experience is, if you then choose to make a note of it, if you can remember it and write it down, you can extract something out of that or not, but it's there.
Mm-hmm. And then when you wake up, do you wake up with an alarm when you lucid dream, or do you wake up naturally? Because surely it seems to me that the power of the alarm clock snapping you to wakefulness might like get rid of any thoughts in your head that you had, or is that not the case?
I don't understand quite what you mean. You mean if your alarm goes off in the real world and you wake up, do you then forget everything? Is that what you mean?
Yes. For me, my alarm normally jars me awake. So
for me, that is completely irrelevant because I've woken up before my alarm every single morning of my entire life except once, which was the first time I ever wrote an exam, and
wow.
I overslept. But it's because that one morning I hadn't set my alarm correctly, so it didn't even go off, and I overslept. So it was a disaster.
That's interesting. But your whole life you've woken up before your alarm. Amazing.
I've always woken up before my alarm. It's very strange. Even if I set my alarm at a strange time or a different time or really early in the morning, always woken up. Often 5 minutes before my alarm goes off.
So when you first became a Time Lord, that's amazing. I don't know what your brain has that mine doesn't, but I need to steal some of that. Okay. Switching a little bit from the topic of lucid dreams, I'll tell you a dream that I've had, and then I want you to share with me some dreams that have stayed with you. That maybe you've had once off, but then just some dreams that have stayed with you. Since we're speaking about flying, you reminded me of a dream that I had once when we were in school. You remember we used to play football?
Yes.
And we played every day at break. And one night I dreamed that I got to school and everything was just as normal. And then we were playing football, and people started flying. They were playing football in the sky. And I stopped and I looked at them and I was like, that is amazing. I really want to do that. And I really, really wanted to fly. But I couldn't because I didn't have a license. And the whole dream, it was just me standing there, looking up at my friends flying, thinking, if only I had my license, I could fly.
Your license is lucid dreaming. That is the license.
It came so clearly to my brain. I haven't thought of that in years. But for weeks, I was disappointed in myself after I woke up, because I was like, why didn't you just fly without a license? But for some reason in my dream, it prevented me. So what are some dreams that have stayed with you? Yeah, now I know. If only I'd known then.
But in my experience of the lucid dreaming, it took a lot of work before I had my first one, and for me they were few and far between. And as soon as I stopped dream journaling and actively working towards it, they stopped. So it takes quite a lot of effort, conscious effort, and work at it for a month or whatever until you have one.
All right. We should do a challenge. We should do a challenge. I think for the next month. So podcast 5, we can start from tomorrow, or if you want, tomorrow. Let's be active in this. From tomorrow for 1 month to keep a dream journal and let's see what happens. So I'm the unconvinced skeptic, and you are the experienced traveler.
You need a notebook and a pen right now as soon as we're done podcast.
I have it right. Here we go. I've got a beautiful notebook of Mother Russia and a pen in my hand. Sorted. I'm always prepared.
Done. Okay, me too. Here's a notebook and I have a pen.
All right, that's the challenge. 30 days.
Challenge accepted. You said I'm an experienced traveler. There's actually a term for someone who dreams actively called I don't even know if this is pronounced right, but an oneronaut.
An oneronaut?
You can Google that. There's a term for it.
All right.
So
I'm going to Google it, but yes, tell me.
You wanted me to tell you about a dream that stuck. So there's 3 I want to mention, just because why not?
All right.
And the one is quite directly related to lucid dreaming because it only started happening to me when I started lucid dreaming. And it touches on this phenomenon called false awakenings. So I don't know if you've ever had a dream, like when I was a kid I had this dream. I woke up and I put on my school clothes and I brushed my teeth and I ate breakfast and brushed my teeth, and then I woke up and I had to for real go do those things. But a false awakening is when you wake up and you carry on about your life, but you're actually still dreaming and you don't know, and then you wake up for real. But you thought you were awake, but you weren't. So it's almost the opposite. It's almost the opposite of lucid dreaming. It's when you think you're awake, but you're not awake. Okay. So I'm sure you've had that. Many people have had that. Most people have had false awakening.
I have had a false in what could only be described as the most boring dream known to the existence of man. I dreamt that I woke up and got dressed for school, and that I went to school. And then I woke up and got dressed in exactly the same way and went to school. The most depressing dream ever.
So those ones kind of suck. But I've had a few false awakenings that were pretty terrifying. And I'll tell you the worst one, where I had a series of false awakenings, kind of like Inception again, where they're a dream within a dream within a dream. That's what I experienced. And
may I stop you just to understand you? So you had a series of, like, within the dream you had a series of false awakenings.
So let me just take you through it. So the dream was I was me living out a life, And then at some point I woke up, and there was a slightly different version of me living out a slightly different life in a different part of the world. And then I woke up again, and the same thing kept happening dozens of times, where I kept living out my life, and I thought I just woken up from a dream. And then I was living out some other life, and I was in a new place, and I was with other people, and I was doing different stuff. And I would know it was me, but there were subtle differences within my personality. And this happened over and over and over again until I was conscious of this happening over and over, and I lost who I was because I kept expecting to wake up being someone different. I didn't know who I was anymore, and I didn't know what was real, and it was like everything had no reality to it, because just I would wake up again and I would be somewhere else. And then
You are blowing my mind right now. I'm just sitting here.
I started freaking out because it felt like I was trapped in this thing, like it was this endless cycle where every time I would just be in this other life, and then I'd go to bed, and then I'd wake up and I'd be in some other life. So eventually the last one where I finally woke up for real out of this, it was some scene where I was in my bedroom at home, and I was like tucked into bed, and then my mom walked into my room to say goodnight to me. But it was hyper realistic. It was exactly the way my mom looks, and I rejected her because I was freaking out by this point. I'm like, no, you're not my real mom. I'm dreaming. This is crazy. Get away from me. And she just smiled at me, and she walked up to me and she gave me a hug, and she said, no, don't be silly. And then I started getting violent, and I pushed her, and I was like, you're an imposter. Get away from me. And then she looked at me straight in the eyes, and she pulled like a funny face, like the way you'd like pull a funny face at a kid to give them a surprise or make them smile. And when she did that, I just realized it's going to be okay. Relax, like it's going to be fine. And then I woke up for real. And I was back in my apartment in Korea in my bed, but it took me a good, let's say 2-3 minutes for me to fully come back to reality. So first I woke up and looked at the ceiling, and I had no idea where I was. Then slowly I realized, oh, I'm in my apartment. Then after a bit I realized, oh, I'm in my apartment, I'm in Korea. Then I realized, oh yeah, it's my second year, I'm working here, I'm a teacher, my name is Matthew. Okay, I'm back. It genuinely felt like my spirit had returned from another place and it was coming back slowly. And that is one of the most powerful and one of the experiences it's impossible for me to ever
Let
forget.
me just say
It left a very deep
that at
impression
this
on me,
point,
yes.
you've blown my mind, and I literally do not know what to say. I am just... I want to almost to stop and meditate on that dream for a second. Because my brain is like, what is that? Aliens messing with us? Is it like, what is it? It's too crazy.
What's so crazy is that I can remember being in that moment very clearly, and the way that moment felt and how disorienting it was. But then you just carry on about your life and you forget about it, and your life is just your life again. But during those dreams, I was living a life. Like, I was me doing stuff. It's just that it wasn't an entire life. It was short sections that kept being interrupted by a whole other life. And I mean, this leads me into a point I wanted to bring up at the end, but I may as well bring it up now because it fits perfectly. The idea of this reality that we experience and that we share, we only accept it and don't freak out and roll with it because of memory. We just can remember, today I did this, yesterday I did that, the day before that, last week, last year, I used to live there. If you don't have this long chain of memories, there's no difference between a dream and a waking life. You just are in some new reality and you just go about it, and then you are in some new reality and you go about it.
Yeah, the movie 50 First Dates really bugged me because of that.
Yes.
For
yes.
that woman, life
I
would
mean,
be torture if that happened to me.
That leads me on to, it reminds me about another really, really good technique for becoming lucid, which you do in your waking life. Just every now and then throughout the day, ask yourself, what just happened before this? How did I get here? And if you can remember, oh, I was just eating lunch. Oh, I woke up this morning. Oh, yesterday I did that. If you can remember that, you're in this reality, you're in waking life, you're fine. If you can't remember that, you're dreaming. In a dream, you can't remember that because you just popped up in that dream. That's a technique that's worked for me really well.
I just checked to see if
The
I was
second you
dreaming.
can't remember what you did yesterday, and you should do that. You should, if that's the point of the reality checks. Yeah, man, because that's a terrifying moment as well. The first time you ask yourself, what did I do yesterday? Oh, I can't remember. What did I do last? Oh, I can't remember. Oh, I'm dreaming. And then you become
Have you
lucid.
entertained the possibility that maybe our life is just the bottom, the first layer of a dream, and all the dreams we have are those little dreams within a dream, and when we die, someone else or something else is waking up and is like, that was a strange dream, and we are but a glimpse.
That is Alan Watts's theory of
Oh, really?
life.
Interesting.
His theory is, well, what is birth? It's a lot like waking up. And what is death? It's a lot like going to sleep. And then in your sleep, you wake up and you're just in a new life.
That's my brain.
You just are. You are just.
I feel like I'm gonna curl into a little ball and sit in the corner and be like, I will figure it out. It's okay, Jacques. That's a great. This, I don't know what to say. Like, that's a great hypothesis, but.
It's a great hypothesis.
What did you say? Who is the man whose theory it is? I'd like to read a bit. Alan Watts. I'd like to read a little bit more about that. Is it in a book or? That
guy is amazing. Just Google Alan Watts. Google his YouTube stuff. He has a lot of great talks on all sorts of things.
Okay.
I can, after the podcast, I can point you to specific ones. I can't remember them offhand, but yeah, I'm surprised you haven't stumbled across him yet in your wide reading.
Yeah, that's cool. Amazing. I haven't even heard of his name. Yeah.
Wow, man, you're gonna love him. You specifically are gonna love him. The other point I want to bring up real quickly. So we've touched on memory and how our reality only really makes sense because we have memory and we have shared memory. But obviously memory is faulty, which is terrifying in and of itself. But this other point is, we are so quick to dismiss dreams. But the thing is, we've still experienced those things. We've still seen whatever we've seen. We've still done whatever we've done. We still felt whatever we felt in the dream. We have literally lived through whatever it is happened in that dream. It's just that we label it and we put it in a box in our brain as it's not real and it doesn't matter and it's just a dream. But it happened to us.
Yeah. And it has meaning in our life because we can draw on it as a thought and we can use it to form ideas and to meditate on. So it definitely has it is a real part of our life.
Especially, I mean, obviously everyone has to speak for themselves, but so many of my dreams are hyper realistic. They feel to me as real when I'm in them as does.
It's so funny that you say that, because most of my dreams my whole life have been extremely mundane, boring, ridiculous dreams. You mentioned a cricket dream. I had a dream once where I was playing cricket. I was just standing in the field, and my whole dream was someone hit the ball to me. And then there were commentators speaking, and they were like, "Oh, it's just going to be one." And then the camera angle changed and looked at me again. It's like, let's look at this from a different angle. And the camera angle changed, and they were like, let's look at this and I dreamed that for a ridiculous amount of time. And I woke up and I was like, why would I just dream the same event happening from different angles over and over again? And you have these hyper-real dreams, and I have these mundane events that happen to me over and over again.
I certainly have. When I say hyper-real, I don't. Some of them are very mundane. Some of them are very fantastical, but they just feel incredibly real. So what I mean is, it's very difficult for me to. While I'm experiencing them, there's no difference between the feeling of being alive in that dream and the feeling of being alive and living in waking life. Just unless you're lucid, you don't notice that things are strange, like, oh, there's a dragon, and oh, this guy's flying, and whatever. But while you're having it, it's as real as anything else.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, I have two more things I'd like to speak about. I don't know if you have, is there anything you'd like to mention that you have on your list that you'd like to say first?
Well, there's two more dreams I want to go over.
Okay, yes. Let's talk about one of your dreams first.
Crazy.
Yes, let's start about a crazy dream.
So there's two dreams I had about death quite recently. One, very recently, so I've been very down lately, and I had this very depressing death dream. And a few months before, I was in a really happy headspace, and I had this amazing dream about death. So let me start with the amazing one, I guess. So what happened was, in waking life, before I went to bed and before I dreamed, I was at a friend's house rather, and we ate way too much ribs. Everyone bought a kilogram of ribs, and I ate nearly an entire kilogram. I'm a small dude, and I just powered through. And I drank a bunch of wine, and I got meat sweats, and I felt awful, but really stoked that I'd done that all at the same time. And then I had to go to bed. I couldn't function.
And you had red meat terrors.
And it was terrible. And but before that, I'd watched the movie August Osage County. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's this little girl in the movie, and she wants to become a vegetarian because she thinks if you eat meat, it's like eating the animal's fear. And I wondered if that night I hadn't eaten too much fear, and that caused the meat sweats in the dream. But anyway, so crazy, too many ribs to eat. Go to bed, have this dream. The dream was something like this, where my consciousness was, the I in the dream was my consciousness. It was separated from my body. And this consciousness experienced my body drawing its final breath. I lived through the moment of breathe in, breathe out, and then that's it. There was no next breath. There was just the breathing out, and then it stopped. And as it stopped, as I exhaled for that last time, this I-ness, spirit thing, lifted up out of my body. But there were no visuals. It wasn't like I was looking through eyes or anything. It was purely sensation. It was just a realm of sensation. And as I was lifting up, this overwhelming force, almost like gravity, or when you take off in an airplane and you get pressed back in your seat, a force that's just beyond your control, that just does something to you whether you want it to happen or not. This overwhelming force drew me up and out of my body, and there was nothing I could do about it. It was just so enormous. And then I had this feeling of apprehension and things shutting down and closing off, and it was really scary. But then I just decided, let me accept the novelty of this experience. And as I did that, as I made that choice, the overwhelming, crushing feeling transformed into this magical, this like absolutely magical experience. And it just, there was the sensation of just relax, everything's going to be okay, you're about to pop into a new life. And then that's where the dream ended. So that experience, I can't shake having gone through that. I mean, I tell myself it's just a dream, but it was so compelling. It was incredible how deeply it affected me, because in that moment it was real, and there was a sense to it, the way that I have thought about dying and what happens next and how it might feel. It made sense to me that it could happen
I
like
will
this.
say, slightly unrelated, but on the topic of death, because my actual one of the points I wanted to speak about was about the dealing with death in dreams. That I know there's that common, I don't remember the exact wording, but people do say that you often get nightmares after eating red meat.
Okay.
And I've experienced nightmares after eating red meat, and I've wondered personally by myself about whether you're capturing, I don't think there's any scientific basis or any, but I've just wondered whether you are capturing the last feelings and thoughts of an animal, and that is coming through when you're sleeping. And that fear might actually be somehow connected in some way, like whether we can't pick it up, or whether there's a subconscious guilt, or whether there is a type of tensing and atom shift. I know this could very well just be the biggest bullshit I've ever spotted, but I've pondered.
But it's an
I've
idea.
pondered
Yes.
about whether that nightmare from red meat is a direct result of the fear or terror that the animal has experienced in death, that's being somehow
Yes.
transferred to you.
Well, they certainly are. I mean, my mom is another example. When she eats not just red meat, when she eats any meat, too much of it, too soon, too close to bedtime, she has nightmares. I mean, it's certainly there's a link in what's the phrase? It just by word of mouth, it's spread, this idea that if you eat meat, you have nightmares, and there's something behind that.
It could very simply be the belief that, oh my goodness, I've eaten meat, now I'm going to have a nightmare. It could, but
Sure.
I have thought about that sometimes. Whether
I like your theory. I
like it as well, which is,
it's cool to put that kind of thing out there, because then it might just land in some scientist's ear who takes it seriously and says, well, let's try and prove it. And maybe
he disproves, but either way, it's worth.
And then we live in a very different world. Yes. But
how would you feel about eating a steak then? Pretty damn bad.
Oh, I'd do it. I'd love it. Just eat it in the morning. It can't affect me then. Steak for breakfast is the best.
I don't want nightmares. Guilt-free steak breakfast. I love good.
Jacques, have you not watched Notting Hill? Like, carrots have feelings too. Can't eat carrots then. Can't eat anything before bed.
Well, the thing is, I am actually a believer that eating meat is probably morally wrong, and I still enjoy a good steak despite that. So.
Yep.
It's a confession. Gonna be judged in like 200 years by people listening to this and be like, what a motherfucker. They're gonna use that word. They're gonna be like, he ate steak. And I'm gonna be like, it was delicious.
Yeah. Well, let me just quickly run through the last dream then. So that first one was a really positive and uplifting, amazing experience of what death could be like through a dream. And then recently I had the opposite experience through a dream, where I had a different death dream, and it went something like this, where in the dream I was driving a car, and there was this truck in front of me, but it was this massive, impossibly big truck where it the wheels were so large and the 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 container on the back of the truck was so high off the ground that my car could drive underneath the container. And that's exactly what happened. I was driving too fast and my brakes didn't work, so I drove right underneath this
Whoa.
truck, and then I smashed into the front part where the driver would sit, and then I immediately came to a dead halt somehow, magically, and the truck's rear wheels just drove right through my car and killed me instantly. I was just flattened and mincemeated.
And you experienced the death in the dream.
I experienced that, but there was no pain or anything. It was just I was alive and then I was dead, instantly. I was just no longer alive. And then it was again that exact same feeling of where I'm suddenly disassociated from my body, but there's this consciousness still around. There's like an I-ness, but there's no longer visuals. It's just a being. And the first thought that popped into my head was, am I dead? I must be dead. And then immediately there was nothingness where my consciousness started compressing and shrinking and being, it felt like I was a wave, like almost an electrical impulse wave that just shrunk and ran out of energy and collapsed. And it was, the feeling of it was constricting, like you were being crushed into nothingness, and then eventually I was nothingness. There was absolute zero void, and then the dream ended. But that was one of the worst things I've ever felt, ever, waking a dream. That is probably the worst thing I've ever felt. It just, absolute nothing.
You experienced the machine in Douglas Adams'. You experienced how infinitesimal the universe is, and how small you are compared to it.
Kind of like that, but I've had that kind of thought before.
Yes, but you experienced it in the dream. Like you didn't just think about it.
It was more like I was being forced into it. That's what it was. It was being forced into nothingness. And again, the same way in the first death dream, there was nothing I could do about it, but it was an uplifting feeling, and there was hope at the end of it, and something new was going to happen. In this one, there was nothing I could do about it, and it was the opposite of hope. It was, there is nothing, it's over, that's it.
And when you were lying there, woken up after this dream, what were your thoughts? What was running through your head after this?
Well, just the feeling lingered. I mean, the emotional low lingered.
I think people have become religious for less experience than that.
Yes. So then, what I was saying earlier, they're just dreams to an extent. I mean, you carry on about your day-to-day life, but that sits with you.
Yeah.
It sits with me.
I've had that.
That I've lived through this thing, and the feeling of those moments, I'll never forget either of those two experiences. Much like I'll never forget any other experience, like when I paraglided or when I bungee jumped. That experience is over and it's happened and it's in my past, but you remember it and you can kind of relive it, and it's the bungee jump is as real to me as certain.
And I can believe that affects how you feel about death in your life, because that is, as far as you're concerned, a real consideration, a real aspect of what death could be like. Or
yes, it's now in my mind that's a possibility, whereas before there was, that possibility didn't exist.
One of the future nonsense conversations that we should have, and anybody who ever listens to this should have with one of their very good friends, is the absurd and concerning and serious and silly and ridiculous and everything you can think of possibilities of the afterlife. I think it's a fun idea.
Yes, that would be fun. That would be fun. But I guess one more thing I could say about those two dream experiences is in relation to a hypothetical conversation about what could happen next is it's one thing to bounce possibilities around and intellectualize things
Yes.
and come up with ideas in your head that are intellectual constructs, but it's a very different thing to experience something where there's a feeling attached to it and memory and emotion and something you've lived through that was scripted and you've experienced it. Whether it's true or not is irrelevant, or whether it's real or not is irrelevant, or whether it's just a dream or not is irrelevant. I've had that experience.
Yes,
now.
I completely agree with you.
And that's there forever.
I completely agree with you. And I think that's an important part of the human experience, because we have these different experiences which are so vivid to us that even though we're living on the same planet, we can each experience things so vastly different that I don't think we'll run out of experiences that we can share with others and which can help us move forward and learn. I mean, I have pondered on death for a long time in my life, and in many different aspects and ways and theories, but still those two dream experiences have let me think about it in ways that I'd never considered before. I'd never considered being
Really?
The second one especially, I'd never ever considered being forced into nothingness. It's a very compelling and scary and interesting, but also very not interesting as well at the same time. Thought about what death could be like, because as a non-religious person myself, it's a very real thought to consider, this compression into forced nothingness. Christopher Hitchens' thought on death is one that I always entertain, when he said that when someone asked him what dying was like as he was suffering through cancer, what he thought dying was like, and he's obviously had different answers at different times, but one of the stories he told was, it's like being at a party and the party's great and you're loving it. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And then someone comes to tell you that, listen, it's time to go. But the party's not going to end. It's going to carry on without you. And that's what death feels like. And that I remember very clearly, because I thought it's a very good way to put the thought of if your life ends truly after death, of how to consider it. And it's also a very good way to remind you to enjoy the party while we're here. I'm not convinced whether it's true or not, but I think it is a appropriate thought on death, since we've spoken about it here at A Dream.
But those are that's the power of ideas. So someone like Hitchens, he has a name and he has celebrity status and he writes books and he gives talks that millions of people hear, and he puts ideas into people's heads. He doesn't know exactly he certainly tries to put certain ideas in people's heads and others just happen. And we all do this, but he just has a huge reach. And something like that story, he just told this story about what he thinks. He just tried to describe his experience of death. But now, someone like what you just said, you take that idea, and what you do with it is you go, it's like a party, then I need to enjoy it as much as I can. And then that, whether you're conscious of it or not, that goes in your head forever. And maybe 10 years later, you're a crazy hedonist. And then you have that moment where you realize, I've just been having fun for 10 years because once I read this one little thing in a Hitchens thing, and it went into my head, and it totally hijacked my.
Well, I try not to have such extreme shifts in the way I live my life from ideas, unless I feel it's warranted, and I've thought about it for a long time. But I do think that a lot of people certainly do that, based on just a single thought and not a lot of evidence. But I think we're all guilty of hearing an idea at least once in our life and taking it way too far before going like, oh my goodness, what have I done? Like
Yeah, I'm probably the most guilty person ever in life of doing that.
I think I'm I
I do
think
that
I'm a
all the
slightly
time.
conservative in that. I often think I should maybe be slightly more expressive in that field. So it's just interesting to have those opposing views. To get back to dreams, I still want to ask you
Yes.
one last thing. Uh, uh,
Okay.
because we haven't spoken about recurring dreams yet. Which
Okay.
recurring dream would you say has or have you had a recurring dream? And if you have, which one would you like to speak
Yes.
about? Which one do you think has been the most interesting to you?
Well, I guess you should define recurring dream. I haven't had a recurring dream in the sense of the exact same thing happening over and over again. I've had a recurring dream in the sense of a very similar set of circumstances playing out over and
Okay, well,
over again.
speak about that.
So, and what is cool is that I can link it to a real life occurrence that might have sparked them all.
Okay.
But so the recurring set of dreams is I have a lot of dreams where I get into physical fights with people. So, for example, someone will break into my house in the dream, and I will defend the house. And let's say the guy has a gun, and I have, sorry, let's say the guy has a knife, and I have just my fists. So he might attack me, and he'll slash me with a knife, but it will just make these tiny marks on me. And then I'll punch him, but my punch will be crazy overpowered, and it will like explode him.
That's
And
amazing.
that type that type of dream I've had a lot where I'm ridiculously
Mhm.
overpowered and the other person is they seem really scary, but then their attacks are kind of ineffectual and useless. And I don't want to hurt the other person or kill them or whatever, but it just happens. Like I really mess up the other guy or I kill the other guy. And that has happened, that type of dream has happened a lot. Um, and where I think that's the experience that I think that stems from is once when I was in primary school, let's say I was 12 years old. I think I was 12 years old. I was at a friend's house and we were in the front lawn and we were wrestling. And his brother was there, and his brother was 3 years younger than us. And we were all just like taking turns wrestling each other in grass. But as you know, you're boys and there's ego and you want to be the winner and you want to wrestle stronger. And my friend and I were very similarly matched, but obviously when we wrestled his younger brother, we were much stronger than him. And this one day we wrestled, and I wrestled the young brother to the ground, and then for some reason I put my hands together and I pressed down really hard on his chest. Not a punch, like an open palm hit. Really hard on his chest. And I was like laughing and smiling and glorying in my victory. But he freaked out. And my friend, his brother, looked at me and he was like, you could have stopped his heart. And the kid was on the ground like freaking out, and I'd hurt him, like I'd really hurt him somehow. And then this guy was my best friend, and he just abandoned me outside, took his brother in, and I was just like left outside on his lawn. And I like climbed his tree, and I sat in the tree for like what felt like an hour, and then eventually I went inside his house and I apologized, and it was really awkward for a bit between everyone. And then, I mean, after a while, we patched up the friendship, and it was fine again. But that experience stays with me. I mean, I had no idea how much I hurt that brother, and I was very unaware of my power, and I was completely in the moment where I just was glorying in the fact that I was stronger than him, that I'd beat him, and it was awesome that I could do this. And I feel like if I have to guess why that recurring dream type thing has come up, I think it stems from that. And to go even further, I guess since that experience in my life, I've always been incredibly careful of being, of hurting people, and of going too far, and of almost of like being my best in a weird way, because I'm too scared I'm going to hurt someone else. I know that if I really do my thing, I'm going to hurt someone else, to generalize in a big way. So yeah, those things are all bundled
That's
up.
very interesting, and I like how you can link it to an actual event, and that you can see that it even in your subconscious, that it's somehow carried on through your life. How something which maybe most people don't even think about anymore, and they don't know why they act a specific way they do, might just stem from the subconscious act, that the subconscious message that they've told themselves from an act they did when they were a lot younger. And I think that's very interesting, because I know that you say that, and I'd never considered things like that before I spoke to you about that. I did consider it, but I didn't think it had impacted me as powerfully before I started to think about it as much as it has. So that's very interesting.
Well,
for me.
I mean, I've been writing recently, and part of the writing has been purposely trying to dig up all these childhood things that happened to me, and then think about, have those moments had effects in my life later on? And a lot of them seem to have, and a lot of them seem to be very subconscious, like you said. A lot of them seem to have some emotional experience happened as a kid that then I forgot about, but the modifications in my behavior have just been, it's like my brain got rewired after that emotional experience, and now I am a certain way purely because of that.
And it concerns me, because what about the memories you don't remember? The things you don't remember?
Yes, exactly. So, yeah.
Alright, well, you've literally covered everything I have. That's great work. Do you have anything else you'd like to speak about, or something you'd like to ask me?
Not particularly, but I would like to ask you if there are any more dreams you wanted to share, because you haven't mentioned too many.
I'll share
something particularly cool you want to throw in as a final closing
I'll share a couple of dreams. The one I'll share, my recurring dream, actually relates to this, I think, somehow, because you say you have a lot of dreams where you're fighting, and I never thought of it before, but most of my dreams, the ones that are not mundane, seem to be of me running, running away from something, which is very interesting. And one of my recurring dreams, which I've had the most, is I start on top of a mountain with an expedition of people, and we're climbing this mountain. And it's a beautiful forest, and things are amazing, and suddenly this giant worm attacks us. It jumps out of the ground, a la Tremors. Just jumps out of the ground, and suddenly we're on a swamp in one of those hovercrafts floating on top, driving away, and there's three of us, and this worm is chasing us, and it chomps the two hovercrafts on either side of me, and then, depending on how long I can take it, I wind through the swamps looking for an exit while the worm chases me. I've had this dream probably 15 times in my life. And it's the same in almost every single way, except I would say the last 3 or 4 times when I'm on the mountain, I now know that the worm is coming. Because I'm like, oh crap, I'm on the mountain. And then
Yeah, I've been here
I
before.
try to choose different paths, but I'm always waking up. But the theme that runs through is I have many other dreams. I've had dreams with snakes, and I've had dreams with one when I was growing up. I dreamt I went to a circus, and the only thing at the circus was a gorilla in a cage, and with a background of darkness. And the gorilla's very calm, having a great time, and then he sees me, and he's like, "Not you." And he rips open his cage, and he starts to attack me, and he runs. And he runs at me, and then I just turn around and run away for my life. And I have
Wow.
absolutely no idea if this has any basis with my real life, but it seemed very, it immediately came to me when you said you've had a lot of fights in your life, in your dreams, that almost all of my dreams that I can think of, in some way or another, end up with me running from something, which is very strange. So
Okay.
I'll just share that with you.
I think there's. I feel like there is something to certain dreams. I think there's something to, in the sense that there is a link to real life events, and there is a link to like recurring wiring or recurring programs in your subconscious. But there are other dreams that I feel like are just randomness throughout the day. So it's worth
Yes, I agree
investigating.
with you completely that there are many dreams, but for some reason, I just felt, just on a plain feeling, that there was something to the running away, but I don't know what. That's why I
Yes.
mentioned it. Uh,
Just keep pondering it, and especially if you dream journal and you can
mhm.
remember them clearly and start making a list and
Yes, I'm
getting more
excited. I'm
details.
excited about this lucid dream challenge for the next 30 days. Okay,
Cool.
but I
Do it for 30 days. That's a, if you can dream journal every day for 30 days, and then and start doing reality checks. Figure out, choose a few that you think will work for you, and then just Google
I
reality
do have a
checks
question
list or
for you though.
whatever.
So you said when you
Yes.
started the lucid dreams, you didn't have any dreams for a while. What do you write in the dream journals when you don't remember any dreams?
Uh, okay, well, let me re-explain myself. Before I started the lucid dream journey, before, I never remembered dreams, and I thought that I didn't dream. But when I started looking into it and researching it and using a dream journal, then I very quickly started remembering. But if you don't,
So
then you don't.
literally
Then
every
just
day
leave it
that you had
blank.
the dream journal, you had something to write.
Well, I mean, it probably was maybe one dream on a Monday, and then nothing on a Tuesday, and then one dream on a Wednesday, and then one dream on Thursday, and then nothing, and then the next week it would be maybe one dream every night, and the week after that it would be two dreams every night.
Mm.
I'm sure there
But
was
so you
a
didn't you did
gradual
but I mean if you
increase.
didn't have a dream, it's not the end of the world. You can have a blank day.
No, no,
Okay,
no, no,
cause
no.
'cause I was a
No,
bit
of
worried. What
course,
if
of
I get
course.
like 3 blank days? I'm gonna be like, oh my goodness.
It's going to happen. I guarantee you that's going
Okay,
to happen.
okay, I feel better
But
now.
I also guarantee you that if you do a dream journal every single morning, your dream recall will
Okay,
increase.
that's amazing. Okay.
Because it's not that you're having dreams. It's just that you're remembering, because you're still having all those dreams. You just haven't remembered normally all of them. Well, on that note, Jacques, shall we call it
I
a
think
night?
that's a great idea. Have a good one, Matthew.
Cool, man. You too. Cheers.